Hi, everybody. This is Bob Gale, co-creator of Back to the Future, and you're listening to Brad Gilmore.
Doc! Okay, relax, Doc. It's me. It's Martin.
No, it can't be. Just sent you back to the future.
Yeah. Oh, I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future.
Great Scott.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're going to build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Whoa, this is heavy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Back to the Future, the podcast, the only podcast looking back in time at the greatest film trilogy of all time, Back to the Future. I'm your friend in time, Brad Gilmore. We roll on through season 10, and I have a returning guest with us today. Eric Tate is the proprietor of Collect BTTF, BTTF.com. You'll see that's a recurring theme in our podcast today. I'm having trouble counting T's. I don't know why. But he has a great site that he just launched, collectbttf.com, where he houses an archive of all Back to the Future related collectibles that now is an easily searchable database. And Eric also spent some time quite recently seeing the opening previews of Back to the Future, the musical on Broadway, which is something that I'm going to be doing in October. And we talk about his experience at the musical and a little bit about the musical itself. I want to warn everybody, there are no spoilers. I don't know why I warn you about no spoilers, but if you're worried about spoilers, there are no plot or detail-related spoilers to our conversation with Eric Tate. I have not seen the musical. I am waiting, and I'm staying spoiler-free until I go with my wife to New York in October. It's not October 21st. That would have been pretty cool. However, it is in October, so that's got to count for something. But nevertheless, we're going to kick this into high gear. I appreciate all you, by the way, for leaving reviews on Spotify and answering the question of what you thought of the episode. That stuff is really helpful. But now, let's stop. Let's stop talking. Let's get to my interview with Eric Tate on Back to the Future, the podcast, Season 10. Welcome, everyone, back to the Future, the podcast. A returning guest is joining me right now. This man is the proprietor of collectbttf.com, which is officially launched. He is a fan favorite of mine, and I'll tell you why, because I text him all the time with Back to the Future questions, or if something came out, or if I need to double-check something, I text this man, and he also recently saw the Back to the Future musical, so we're going to jump into that as well. Eric Tate returns to the podcast. Eric, man, how's everything going?
Going well. How about you, Brad?
I'm going well, man. Look, you've been staying busy in the Back to the Future world. It's funny that we're having this podcast right now because the other day I interviewed Mikey Day. And Mikey Day had been on the podcast before. He's got a new Netflix series out. We did an interview, and afterward he and I talked for a second, and he said, hey, I want to really thank you for sending a few things over to me other than the book. And I said, well, actually, those items came from my good buddy Eric, and he's asking me to send along his thank yous to you.
Awesome.
For those items, man. But yeah, you've been stuck in Back to the Future collections, in the lore of all the toys and the games and the items and the books and everything coming out for Collect BTTF. That's been your social media handle forever. But tell people, what is collectbttf.com? Collectbttf.com. Easy for me to say.
Yeah, so the website was something that's been in my mind forever. And the general premise is, for fans that have been around a while, are, I'm sure, familiar with the Collector's Almanac that came out a few years ago. And I remember one day I was looking at the almanac. I got it when it came out and thinking, like, man, this is awesome. Like, this is like the encyclopedia of Back to the Future. Like, and I started thinking back to when I was a kid and having, the row of encyclopedias on a bookshelf and stuff. And then I thought one day, like, man, it would be so awesome if, like, there was a Wikipedia version of this, like an ever evolving, constantly updating, like, version. Because, the book, I think I said it last time, the book is like a snapshot in time.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is incredible. Every fan should have it. but there's things that have come out since. A book can only be so long, so like, how do you incorporate new things, the ever evolving changes, things that are discovered that people forgot about over time? And that's where the idea came from long ago. And then actually building it started really as like a COVID project, just like so many other things that people did over the last couple of years. So the general idea behind the website is it's I think the tagline I put up there is like, it's a digital time machine. Like
Mhm.
it's a preservation effort for Back to the Future collectibles of the past, present, and moving forward into the future, so that people can go in there, they can reminisce, they could, it doesn't even have to be the hardcore collectors. It could be someone who happened to go to Universal Studios in the 90s and they rode the ride, and they're not like Back to the Future collectors, but they have fond memories of going to the gift shop. Maybe they're going through like, wow, this pennant from 1992, like, man, that brings back memories, like just those kind of things. So the overall point of the site is to preserve the history of Back to the Future collectibles, so that anything and everything that is eligible for the site, licensed collectibles, promo materials, stuff like that, gets immortalized, so that fans could go back and look at it and reference it if they want to go out searching for things on their own and build their collection even further. And then in addition to that, I wanted to make it a very community centric site. So it's got right now the community section. You can browse other people's collections that have submitted pictures to me. I've started putting in bios from people of what got them into Back to the Future, stuff like that. And there's more things planned in the future. Like, I want this to be a hub for fans to be able to reminisce, go through and see collectibles of the past and present, feel like they have a voice in our community, and being able to have a place that they could show off their own collections. So it's obviously going to be an ever work in progress, but overall, that's the main gist of it.
Yeah, from when you and I first got together, they would think it was during the pandemic when we first started kind of texting each other and emailing. You did the podcast. I know this has been something that you've definitely been working on for quite some time. I mean, the site bolsters what, 1,200 plus items and counting.
Yeah.
Here, let me refresh the page. 1,255 items to be precise, and counting. What was like the process of trying to figure out, put this database together? Like, for instance, my question is, would you say, okay, we're going to start with the home video releases, and I'm going to figure out every iteration of that's been released, or what every book has been released, and you went by categories and then subcategories, or how did you go about compiling the database?
Yeah, it was ever changing during the design. I went through a couple different iterations of how I wanted to do it. And I thought what would really make the most sense for people is exactly what you just said, categories and subcategories. So for example, there's a category for apparel. Under there, you're going to find t-shirts, sweaters, hats, scarves, things like that. And it's all just broken down by that. And it's got a easy to use drop down menu to go through the categories. Search works pretty well, in my opinion. So if you just want to look for anything released by Funko, type in Funko in the search bar and you'll get the results. I have a private backlog list that's probably longer than the amount that's already on the site. So, I made it very clear when I launched this, like, this is just the starting point. Like, people are going to go to it and they're going to be like, oh, this VHS release isn't there yet. And that's the keyword, yet. Like, this is an ongoing project for the fans like myself, and if even one person finds this helpful, then it was all worth it.
And first of all, everyone who's a fan is going to find this helpful, because I think that we have such a passion for everything Back to the Future. But even for me and for yourself, I'm sure there's things that come up that I'm still like, oh, I didn't know that. Every time I'm like, and you would think, as many times as we've combed through these movies, read the spec scripts, watched every behind the scenes video, perused eBay umpteenth times trying to find those collector's items, that we would know everything. But I remember looking at your site the other day when you had sent it to me, and seeing like things like, what was the one that stuck out to me? There was a watch. There was like a limited edition watch. There's like only 100 pieces. It was like was it a Blockbuster release or a Universal watch or something like that that stuck out to me. I'll pull it up here while I'm talking about it. And I was like, I never heard of this before. When did this come out? And it wasn't like a super old thing either. Let's see, where is it? The Undone.
Was it the Undone Watch?
The Undone Watch. 100 of them came out, according to your site, in March of 2022. Completely over my head. I'd never heard about this. And the watch, by the way, is a pretty sweet looking watch.
It is. It does look nice.
What do you know what retail on that was for? Like how much they were selling for? Is it on here? No, but it's 40 millimeters.
I don't think I have it on there.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't think I have the price on there. I could be completely wrong on this. I want to say somewhere around 300 or 400.
Wow.
Could be completely wrong. I don't have one of those personally. That's kind of like how you said, like you're going through and you learn things over time. Like no matter how much you browse eBay, you're like, wow, I didn't know about that. That particular watch is something I discovered while building the site.
And
so it's it was crazy to me. And then I looked up the details and all that, and now it's on the site.
And let me ask you this, because there's been like the DeLorean released watches, like a series of watches, and then there was like an official, some sort of official watch of some kind that came out not too long ago. It was a really interesting design. How do you decide what goes on? Like, is it like if it's peripheral with the Back to the Future, or does it have to be an official Back to the Future? Like, how do you make that distinction?
That is a great question. So the distinction there, for the most part, when it comes to a collectible, is it an officially licensed product? And part of the reason why I decided to put that stipulation there is if I didn't, like, it's already going to be tough enough to find what I would consider the finished point of this website. But if I had to start including every single, unlicensed art and custom made fan figures, stuff like that, which are all incredible. But if I had to include all those, I mean, where do I draw the line between, someone drawing a stick figure and saying this is Marty McFly? It's got to have some sort of there's got to be a line drawn. So in general, as far as the database goes, it's licensed collectibles, official promo material, published works of art, and that includes, like your book, other books about the series, things like that. And other things like that. And obviously there's a little bit of discretion there, and I'm willing to listen to feedback from other people about changing things. And that's another reason for the community showcase on there. Like, there are people out there that make prop replicas and custom pieces of Back to the Future that honestly, as far as quality, are probably better than the officially licensed stuff. So I'll give you an entire page on the community section. It's going to have it's going to be easier to find there than in the database. Send it along. I want to show it off to everyone.
Yeah, you are right too, man. If anybody listening has never spent time going through the eBay channels and the online sites and looking at some of the custom made things, like I have a few items. Like I have a little prop replica of Biff's cane, old Biff's cane, and the Nike tube that the shoes and everything come in. Like, here, I'll show you. And there's so many like really good little, this is the Nike footwear tube that you find online and things like that some people do. And there's like one or two people, I can't remember their usernames, who are very good about putting up Back to the Future custom. I don't know if it's 3D printed or whatever it is, but they do a great job of it. But to me, like you said, drawing that line, like you have to draw a line in the sand on some of these things because there are so many out there. And and then, like you said, just the offshoots too of, okay, if I include this DeLorean item, do I have to include every DeLorean item as a Back to the Future collectible? And is really every DeLorean item Back to the Future collectible? No, not really. I mean, it's a hard thing.
In the FAQ, I have a little page that talks about what qualifies to be in the database, and I do have a line item in there that basically describes exactly what you just said. Like, what doesn't qualify? Generic things that are only partially sort of related to Back to the Future, and I think I have in parentheses such as generic DeLorean merchandise.
Yeah,
Like
I
I would
see
love
it
to
right
put
there.
all,
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to put in all the DeLorean merchandise. Like you mentioned the DeLorean watches. I have one of those
Hmm.
from their first release. Gorgeous watch.
Really pretty.
Until like I switched to like a smartwatch, I wore it every day. I loved it. But it's not Back to the Future merchandise. It's DeLorean merchandise. You got to draw the line.
Yeah, you have to. But those watches were sweet, man.
Yeah.
They were pretty sweet. Have you seen? Did you? This is slightly off topic, but did you see the new Fast and Furious movie?
I
Fast
have
10?
not, no.
So there's a scene where they have the new DeLorean in there, the electric
Nice.
DeLorean, and it does look pretty cool, man. I'm not gonna lie to you, it looks pretty sweet.
Tempting.
Back on yours, like what was, and I think I've asked you this, a similar version of this question when we did the last podcast, but what was, when compiling this database, your holy grail find, your personal one? Like, wow, like we talked about earlier, I did not know that they had blank. Like, for instance, one of my holy grail finds is over here. It's the and I think you and I may have texted about it. It's a Universal Back to the Future dinosaur snow globe. You know
Love
which one
that
I'm
one.
talking about. It's
Oh yeah.
so
Got it
sweet.
right on the shelf over here. Yeah.
So yeah, you have one too. I think maybe you might have even texted me that link. You might have. I don't remember, but I know that we exchanged a message about that one because that was a real fun piece that I got. What was, when putting the database together, a holy grail find for you?
So there's been quite a few. That's a great piece that you mentioned, that snow globe. There's also another snow globe where it's got like Hill Valley in like the future Hill Valley in the ride in a snow globe. That one's really cool. I gotta say, one of my most one of my holy grail ones just came out a week and a half ago. And that is at the musical. So they opened up the store, and I knew in general what merch was going to be there because the show's been open overseas for a couple years now, and I had a feeling they'd have some new branded stuff for Broadway. But what I didn't expect was when they opened that curtain, I peeked through the window, and I saw that Back to the Future the musical skate deck. So when I saw that, I lost myself. My wife was like, "Calm down, it's gonna be okay." I was like, "I'm walking out of there with that thing." So that, because I don't know how many they plan on making. I know they've restocked it a couple times, but it's not sold online or anything like that. And the reason why I say it's a holy grail to me is kind of like some other things that are really sentimental to me. It represents not only a good and in a way rare collectible, but it also represents a good experience. So that day was so magical at the musical, and that board, I don't know if you saw it online, but I was fortunate enough to get it signed by Bob Gale, Michael Claster, and Alan Silvestri, and the entire cast and crew of Back to the Future the musical on opening night. So like that to me is like a holy grail, and I'm like you can take everything from me, I'm keeping that.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, we're about to get into the musical here in a moment because what you just said is incredible, and I can't wait to talk about your experience there. But so the skate deck was one. The snow globe. Do you have the Hill Valley snow globe?
I do, yeah.
You have that one. Is there anything else that comes to mind as like a really awesome find?
So some of my favorite stuff comes from Japan.
Mhm.
So I feel like J- the fandom for Back to the Future is probably overall been the strongest in Japan. So even today, they're still releasing like just the coolest, unique little things at Universal Studios, even though the ride's not there. So coming across all these, like if you just search like Japan in the search bar, obviously there's still a lot more out there, but like there's like pocket watches and all these just random cool things that have come from Japan, past and present. I think I forget if I mentioned the last time we talked, that one of my favorite items, I've only found one other copy in the hands of someone, and my copy and his copy, the only two that I am aware of, is this big um, English language teaching kit for Japanese students. So it's got workbooks and audio cassettes and all this stuff to help Japanese children learn English. And it comes with a VHS of the movie that is time coded to pages in the worksheet. So it'll say at like 1 hour and 4 minutes and 3 seconds, follow along with this sheet and stuff like that. And the example I've given to like friends when I've talked about this one is like, I imagine like an 8-year-old learning English with phrases like, "What are you looking at, butthead?" And like, it's just like, it's incredible to me.
Why do you? Yeah. There's this whole contingent of Japanese Americans now who learn to speak English through Back to the Future, who just walk around and say you're about as useless as a screen door on a battleship.
Yeah.
That's great, man. And I also know. Was it you who told me that do you have the laser discs of the?
I do. Yeah.
Man. And what are those? Not saying what you paid for them. What is a retail cost on that? If in resale in an online auction setting, what are we looking at realistically in today's dollars?
Depends on which Laserdisc we're talking about. So you've got your typical standard Laserdiscs, and the film was released in standard and widescreen. And those, like, if you're looking for like a factory sealed one, you could probably get them for close to around 100, maybe a little less depending on the seller. But the real extremely rare ones are the Muse laser discs. The what's the other term for them? They're like basically HD laser discs.
Okay.
And high vision. That's what
High
it is.
vision.
Muse high vision laser discs. Those were released, I believe, only in Japan or overseas in general, and required a special Muse high vision laserdisc player. They are incredibly rare. They are like impossible to find today, because of their rarity. I don't even know how many were made of each. Probably not a lot.
Well, because Laserdisc was a format that was here and gone rather rapidly.
Yeah. So then trying to launch the next iteration of Laserdisc, which I'm not sure about the timing, but I'm guessing there was probably competition from DVD as it was coming out. It basically, flopped and failed. There wasn't a lot of things released on Muse High Vision. Back to the Future, each part was released individually on it. I don't have all of them. I have one of them. I have part 3 on Muse High Vision. Those, if you're lucky, you're getting one today for a minimum of $500, and that is like not even in new condition. When those pop up, they get people with deep pockets. They snatch them up immediately because they don't show up often.
Man, $500 on the low end. So I mean,
On
realistically, you're between 500 and 1,000. I'm assuming.
I have seen a couple years ago. I think it was part 2, a factory sealed one. It was in the 4 figures what it sold for.
God, man. But you know what? That just again goes to why even a site like Collect BTTF, excuse me,
There you go.
.com. I don't know why I'm having trouble with that today. Collect BTTF. Yeah, I'm saying it right?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm messing with my own self. But it's why a site like yours, I think, is so fun for us collectors. And even if you're a casual collector like me, I have a small shelf. I mean, I have this Drew Struzan art behind me, signed by him. That's probably what I've spent the most money on, or close to it. I also have the Tom Wilson Griff helmet. That's listed on the site? Yes.
It will be. It's not currently listed, I don't think, but it will be on there.
And that was released through, I think, BackToTheFuture.com sold those, right?
And it was a Universal Studios item as well. I mean, the Tom Wilson signed specific one, yes, from BackToTheFuture.com. But that's a Universal Studios item from back in the day. Back in the prime days of Back to the Future: The Ride.
Oh, wow. Okay, I did not know that that's where that came from. See, this is why we have you, Eric. So that we know where these things come from. Now, as far as a resale thing, what is a good item in general that has held its value, or something in your collection that has appreciated over time? With the more time passes, obviously more items go the wayside, get lost. people move, they get sold in garage sales without people realizing how much they are, and the price goes up in rarity. What would you say is a more valuable, or the one that's appreciated maybe the most in your personal collection?
In my personal collection, off the top of my head, I would have to say basically anything made by Hot Toys appreciates in value. So Hot Toys figures, which are still coming out today, the Part 3 ones are starting to ship to people. They and I don't honestly I don't even agree with it, but they appreciate pretty high. I think like the Doc figure from a few years ago, which retailed for like I don't know 350 or whatever. Like they go for like 750, 800,000 bucks now, sometimes. And it's really just because they're I say limited edition, not because there's a specific quantity, but only because they're sold only for a short period of time, and then they sell out and they're never made again. So people that didn't get them when they come out and want them, the resale value goes up pretty high on those. I would also say there tends to be appreciation, and I know this is pretty common sense, but when it matches up to good quality. So like years back, Diamond Select released prop replicas of Mr. Fusion and the flux capacitor. And despite some quality problems with the first one, they re-released the flux capacitor, did a better job. But either way, they're 1-for-1 scale replicas, and those fetch pretty high resale values because the quality is so good that there are people out there that are using them for their own DeLorean time machine replicas. So, you know, people that were able to get those didn't have to go out and buy a real Krupp's coffee grinder or 3D print these things. They had good quality ones right there. So those are again things that retailed for 200-300 bucks that now fetch sometimes low four figure. So those kind of things definitely appreciate in value.
That to me, when I see people's DeLorean time machines they've put together, I'm still always just blown away by the attention to detail.
Isn't it?
And everybody takes it so serious, as they should. But like hey, I had to go to this junk store where they found the original parts and sift through 50 million parts before I found the one screw that I needed that was the alternating screw from 80. You know what I mean? Like, it's so specific, but they know it to a T. Whereas me, like, I would probably see things more than a normal person would, but I'm not going to look at it with laser vision like a lot of people do, and I think it's just awesome. I have a question about this, though, and this is not about Back to the Future specifically, but it's about collectibles in general, and I think that you're probably the best person to ask this. What do you feel about kind of these, I guess the best way to describe it is manufactured collectibles? For instance, like, hey, we're putting this out, we're calling it a collector's item, and there's only 50 of them. That way it's kind of almost an unorganic or inorganic way of doing it, as opposed to this item was out there for a long time. Now no one can find it. And when they pop up, they are genuinely collectible. Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. Yeah, I think and like you said, this goes beyond Back to the Future,
Yeah.
but pop culture in general has become so much more mainstream and popular over the last bunch of years. And that's a good thing, obviously, that the more fans the merrier.
Sure.
No one has to be gatekeeping this stuff, everyone's welcome. But the problem when anything becomes popular is now you get the vultures coming along trying to make a quick buck off of it. And I'm not saying that all of those vendors that you describe are vultures, but you're right. Like, you start to see the more casual bigwigs who know nothing about the series putting out collectibles and saying, oh, limited edition, and then casually there's more released after they supposedly sold out. I can think of two off the top of my head. I don't know if you want me to
Go
bring
for
any
it.
negativity towards anyone.
No, it's fine.
But, yeah, I mean, like, and I'm just kind of relaying what fans in general have said. But like,
Sure.
one example was Plastic Empire put out a limited edition Radioactive Marty Funko Pop. Which supposedly, I don't know how true this is. Supposedly, the backstory was that it was commissioned through Michael J. Fox. It was going to be a Comic-Con, I think New York Comic-Con exclusive. I could be wrong, but then COVID got canceled. They Plastic Empire bought the rights, so there was a certain amount. They sold them all, and they did say, I think they had a couple reserved on their side. But even just like a week and a half ago or something like that, or 2 weeks ago, there was a post from them about them releasing mystery boxes, and in the picture, oh, how convenient, they still have more of these things that were supposedly limited edition, and they're still popping up. So like I've had friends of mine that didn't get their hands on one during the release being like, this is ridiculous. Like if I want one, I got to go on eBay for $700 when I could have gotten it from them for 40 or whatever it retailed for. And they still got a bunch of these sitting in the back that they held on to for mystery giveaways and stuff like that. So like that kind of ticked people off. The other one, I gotta say, this one bit me the wrong way a little bit. A couple months ago when there was the limited edition clothing line that Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd were promoting.
Yes.
That was through a retailer called Represent, and they do these limited edition drops with celebrities. More power to them. This is what they do. They had put out the Marty puffer vest, and they had a specifically an autographed version from Michael J. Fox that had a patch in the corner, his signature, limited edition. Don't remember the specific number it was. It might have been like 24 vests or something like that. Don't hold me to that. They advertised it, and they put out the vest, and the vest was like, I don't know, I think it was like $2.99 or something. Again, don't hold me to that. It sold out immediately. Conveniently, about 2 hours or whatever later, they were back in stock on the site, the same limited edition one with signature, for now $100 more. And the person started posting in the Back to the Future collectors group that's associated with the company, and he started saying, "Oh, we were able to get Michael J. Fox to agree to sign more thanks to the high demand and blah blah blah." And people that bought those initial batch were like, "Well, you said this was a limited edition. That's why I rushed to get it. Like you just devalued the entire product by putting this out," which, like, I kind of agree with, kind of don't. Like, at the same time, it's still a Michael J. Fox autographed puffer vest.
Sure.
But to your point, you take that limited edition status away after selling it to people, you're going to piss them off.
Yeah. Now that's the stuff I'm talking about. You know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like the plot of Goldfinger. You're right. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna radiate all of their gold, so my gold is worth more. And it's kind of a similar thing of we're gonna hold back on this stock, release it later on, and it devalues the people who, like you said, initially invested. Those are the things that I don't like. And again, this is not this is not even something that happens often in the Back to the Future world. Yeah. But those are never fun, man. But you know what? I do want to talk real quick before we move on to the musical. Collect BTTF.com. I'm going to say it slow so I don't screw it up. Collect BTTF.com. Over 1,200 items and counting. What is your, if you can prognosticate for us through the end of December, how many more additional items do you think are going to be listed in the next 5 to 6 months?
By the end of December, I anticipate that count will at least double. Wow. I mean, I've got, if I had to guess, don't hold me to that one either, but I have a feeling. I've got a large backlog of stuff, and to be honest, I have not even referenced my own personal collection for this site yet. Like, this is just going on memory and searches and lists that I've made in the past. But I've got, so many just random rare things, and not everything I'm saying is big ticket items. I've got just random little trinkets and stuff here and there, random pins that haven't been seen since the 90s, and promo materials, stuff like that. So
some of those pins are my favorite. If you had other than my snow globe from Universal, I think my favorite small trinket Back to the Future collectible, and I'm looking this way because I'm looking over at what I have on my little shelf over here, is probably that Back to the Future 3 Western pin. Like there was the sheriff badge.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was what is the background on that again?
It was a promo item from when the film came out. And it's considered by fans to be one of the rarest pins out there. They actually do still pop up from time to time on eBay, and they get snatched so quickly. But yeah, like it's a little sheriff pin with the Back to the Future 3 logo. I love that pin. It's great.
My favorite, man. And you know what? I like wearing pins on my lapels, on my suit jackets and stuff, but I'm like afraid to wear that one. I'm like, if this falls off, I'm going to be so upset. So I refrain from it. Now, the other last thing before we go to the musical is this is what I wanted to ask you earlier. Speaking of things that popped up on eBay, there was a sweet collection put up, what was it, maybe a year or so ago from Tom Wilson, where he had his own like personal archives of Back to the Future stuff put up. And I remember you and I were going back and forth and texting about it. And at one point, I didn't care what I got. I just wanted to get something, but the prices were out of this world on a lot of the stuff that he had. What do you remember that was listed through that?
Yeah, so Tom Wilson, like you said, went onto eBay and was listing up some things from his own personal collection. And some of these things were, things that are relatively common that you can get other places, but it's got Tom Wilson's name attached to it. So that right there drives it up in both personal value and, monetary value. So there were different keychains and pins and other just random things that were put up. I was fortunate enough to get 2 of them. I got I think it was an out of time keychain, and I honestly, maybe it was a pen. I forget. And like you said, it was real. I think I already had the items. It was just a matter of having Tom Wilson's. He put like a little personalized note with them and stuff like that. So, but I think the one that really caught everyone's eye was the VHS tape.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so the VHS tape originally, before it went through Heritage Auctions, was on eBay. So I had been following along with his auctions. I got notified every time a new one got listed, and the VHS came up. Now, prior to VHS tapes becoming a hot commodity when it comes to factory sealed and driving the value up and everything like that, before that happened a couple years ago, you could get factory sealed copies of Back to the Future on VHS for no exaggeration, $2 or $3 on eBay. Like you were paying more in shipping than on it. Like I've got like a tub of just like random releases sitting in my basement. Like they were so easy to get. But kind of like what happened with the video game market, where games started getting graded and it brought up the value, and people were looking at them kind of like as art pieces in a way. That's what happened to VHS, and it happened to kind of, in a way, coincide with when Tom Wilson put out the VHS tape. So it went on eBay, and before you know it, it had a starting price of maybe a few hundred. I don't remember, but like it felt like within like hours it was listed at like 13 grand. And I remember thinking like, man, I wonder, like I was not bidding on it. Like, no thanks, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm a pass on that one.
Yeah, but I was keeping an eye on it, and I was like, where is this going to end up? And then out of nowhere, the auction was gone, and I was like, I wonder if like, because eBay has like automated tools to try and catch fraud and stuff like that. I thought maybe like, oh, his other auctions average out to $400 or whatever, and now this one's up to 13 grand. Maybe like some automated tool pulled it. But no, apparently what happened was, I'm guessing Heritage Auctions reached out to either him or his representative and said, hey, let's do this through us. We'll encapsulate it, grade it, and all that. And then he made what, like 75 grand on his VHS tape?
Ridiculous. It was ridiculous when I saw that. It was ridiculous when I saw that, and I had a stomach drop feeling because I had like a Back to the Future sealed VHS tape that I bought at some point in the last 10 to 12 years off online. and I bought it only to have the experience. Because for people who didn't grow up like watching VHS tapes, there's such a nostalgic experience of putting the tape in and like dealing with the tracking and watching all the previews. And there would be tapes that I would run out and I would know the previews by heart. And I'd almost look forward to the previews before the actual feature film. And now your feature presentation. Like I remember these. And so I had that feeling. I wanted to be like, man, I wanted to watch it on VHS. And then when I saw that $70,000+, I was like, now obviously extenuating circumstances being Tom Wilson. Yeah. But I was like, man, I probably could have really come up on eBay during that run. Because everybody after here, because that was like headline news. Like it was on major news sites.
Absolutely.
And I remember it was on local news. People were talking about it. And I know that there was probably an influx of people running over to eBay to see if they could get a Back to the Future sealed copy for some
absolutely.
And I was like, man, if only
and
I
you know what, more power to him. I mean, it was he's deserving of it. It's because it came from his hands, and I think he included like a personal note, maybe something else with it. So like whoever ended up with it, for all I know, it was someone who's using it for a tax write-off, some bigwig, but I hope that like a real fan that appreciates it has it. I don't know who has it, but I just hope it's someone who truly appreciates what they have.
Yeah, because that is definitely a rarity. If somebody got it just for a tax write-off, man, that's a killer. I didn't even think of that. I feel like that's what NFTs were with that big thing. I'm like, I think people are just trying to launder money or something, But let's talk about the Back to the Future musical.
Let's do it.
Now, this is something that us fans have heard for well over a decade. Well over. I think like back to the early 2000s is when this idea first started floating around there. And I've talked about it on this show before, but I have not talked to somebody who's seen it stateside. And so I'm excited to talk to you now. I told you before we start recording this book, which is the Michael Klastorin book about the creating the Back to the Future musical in the vein of his Ultimate Visual History book, which is, I haven't cracked the spine on it. As I said, I haven't looked at it yet, but I got it a couple days ago. Talk to me about, one, your excitement level pre Back to the Future the musical, and two, did you do it like me? Because right now, like, I'm not going to read this or look at it until I see the play. I haven't listened to the cast album. I know none of the new songs. I know zero, and I've done that intentionally until I can see it for myself, because I want it. It was almost like this last Indiana Jones movie, to where I didn't watch a single preview. I didn't read a single review. I wanted to know nothing about it going in. This is the same for me. Now, are you like that, or did you do all the research? Because you're a very research-heavy guy. Did you know everything going into it?
A little of both.
Okay. Walk me through it.
Well, first off, before I even get into that, I agree with you. Don't crack the spine and look at that book yet. I was fortunate enough to get that book on opening night, and I haven't read it all the way through yet, but I've gone and just skimmed through it. And yeah, you'll run into spoilers that you don't want to see ahead of time. So
thank you for letting me know.
I would just avoid it. Okay. So leading up to the musical, you're right. This is something that's been in the works for a decade plus. I was going through some old emails the other day, and I'm a little bit of a pack rat when it comes to emails, and I was searching for something completely unrelated, and I came across an email that came from backtothefuture.com. Or might have, was it backtothefuture.com then, or was it still BTTF? Whatever. But Stephen Clark sent out, a newsletter, sales email, and this was 2015, and he put out, confirmed Back to the Future the musical is coming, and just looking back at that history, I just remember being so excited for this forever. Like, I've been waiting for this for a very long time. So the musical came out in Manchester. It was shortly before COVID hit, and unfortunately COVID shut it down for a while. Fast forward, over in London. So I'm kind of in this mix where I wanted to keep up to date on the status of the musical, hear what other people are thinking about it, chat about it, be part of that excitement about it. Um, but I didn't want to have the actual musical spoiled. So I avoided spoilers. However, I kind of broke that when the cast recording came out because I'm a fan of musicals in general. And knowing that there was going to be one based on Back to the Future, like I couldn't resist. And the day the cast recording was released stateside was the same day that my wife and I started a drive down to Georgia to go to a friend's wedding. So we were going to be in the car for like 12 hours. And I said to her, should I listen to it? Like, we have nothing else to do but drive. I was like, should I listen to it? Or should I wait to eventually see the musical? She looked at me, she's like, you're not going to wait. You know, if you don't listen to it now, you're going to listen to it at some point soon. So just get it out of the way.
Just do it.
And I can honestly say I have listened to it. I can tell you my Apple Music Rewind for 2022. It was the number one album, as far as what I listened to. It's so good. You kind of get the overall premise from listening to the cast recording, but it doesn't spoil like some of the big things. Well, there is one big spoiler. I'm not going to mention it here for obvious reasons. But beyond that, it gives you the overall premise, and just objectively, it is such a good musical recording. I mean, this is music that was this isn't done by, some random company that knows nothing about Back to the Future. I mean, this is Alan Silvestri and Glenn Ballard behind the music. I mean, like, it doesn't get any better than that.
Right.
I mean, it's got the heart of Back to the Future. And so I had been very much looking forward to eventually seeing it. And at that time, I mean, there was no official confirmation it was coming to Broadway. We could only assume, but there was no confirmation at that time. So when it was announced it was coming to Broadway, oh, I was on top of that.
You know, as far as the cast album goes, let me ask you this, because you said there's a spoiler in the album, and I haven't listened to the album either. This has all been intentional. It's been hard too, because it does come up in like your suggested all the time. But let me ask you this: as far as, are there, and I don't think this will spoil it for anybody else, are there big differences narratively?
Yes.
Man.
Not a lot. And I do got to say, I mean, they're for the better. They
For the better?
yeah, like what you're asking is like narrative differences between the source film and bringing it to the stage, right?
Yes. Yeah, of course.
And those changes that they make in the musical make it translate better to the stage.
To the
I
stage.
don't want to give you any
Okay.
spoilers, but
Okay.
it makes it better fitting for the stage. And this is not a spoiler, but this is the closest I'm going to come with giving you a spoiler.
Okay.
It makes it better for the family environment so that you can bring your kids to it
Okay.
and
Okay.
and have a great time.
Okay. Okay, I can get down with that. Now, walk me through your opening, because you went on opening night.
I did.
Okay.
So it was
Walk me through the
opening
whole
preview.
experience.
Yeah, so this was opening preview for Back to the Future the musical on Broadway, Winter Garden Theater in Manhattan. And so it was June 30th, 2023. And when I say opening preview, what I mean is that I'm not sure if you're familiar with when Broadway shows open up, they have basically a period of previews where things could change, technical difficulties. They might rework a couple things based on audience reaction. It's basically like, live rehearsal for it
Yeah.
before they have their official grand opening.
Yeah, it's like the
So,
dress rehearsal for Saturday Night Live, right?
yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yep. So this was the first opening night of previews. But just the energy level, you would think this was like, red carpet gala. Like it was on point. So my wife and I went and had great seats, right orchestra section, surrounded by plenty of other diehard dedicated fans that I've known either online or in person. We went with some great friends, and we went early enough just to really just hang out and enjoy the atmosphere and be around everyone. So one thing they've done here that they don't have, as far as I know, over in London, is they have a dedicated store for Back to the Future the musical. And it has its own public entrance right off the street. So even if you're not going to the musical and you want to go shop at the musical store, it's there. So my wife and my friends and I, we were all there, and they were doing a grand opening of the store at 5 p.m. that day. And Bob Gale was on hand to do the ribbon cutting. So it was just an incredible experience. And when they cleared the view for the window, that's when I saw that skate deck I mentioned earlier, and I just lost it. So you can tell that Bob Gale and all the others involved had a hand in like making sure that this thing was set up to please the fans. I mean, it's not like there's a picture I posted on social media, but like if you look at the store, like it's a fan's haven for just like an experience. You walk in, there's stuff all over the place. It's got great scenery, backdrop, all that stuff. Everyone's energy level was so high. And Bob Gale he was on cloud nine the whole time, and rightfully so. I mean, like the man has accomplished so much, and
Yeah.
let's be realistic. I mean, I'm sure financially he doesn't need to be doing any of this, if I had to guess. And so you could tell he's got his heart into this.
Yeah.
And he was there, he did the ribbon cutting. Anyone else in his position could have cut the ribbon, waved, said hi, and went inside.
Got out of there. Yeah.
He just hung out with the fans. We all just hung out together. He was
guy.
he was one of the fans at that point. You couldn't wipe the smile off of his face if you tried. He was so happy to be there. I was fortunate enough that was my first time finally meeting him in person. It was a great experience. Plenty of other people too. And this was such a big event that people were coming in from all over the world. I mean, we had fans that have seen it in London 50 plus times who were there, and their excitement level, you would think they were seeing the show for the first time. Has a dedicated fan base. I believe you're familiar with the Back to the Future the musical fans groups that are online, run by Tony and Angela.
Angela, Daz. Shout out to Daz.
Yeah, I got to meet them in person at the musical. They had flown in. Just incredible people. They're just so passionate about it, and enjoyed every moment with them and with everyone else. And that was all just before the actual show. I mean, you go inside and energy level is still high. Kind of like I said about Bob Gale, just hanging out with the fans. It was the same thing with Alan Silvestri. He was, just there taking pictures with everyone, and energy levels were so high. Everyone was just so respectful of one another, and the show was incredible. I mean, it was fantastic.
How'd the set look?
Oh man. Whew. If Back to the Future the musical on Broadway does not win a Tony Award for special effects, I'm going to be very angry.
You're making me so excited right now, Eric. I can't even tell you.
They do such a good job. It blew my mind. And like some of the things that they do as far as special effects, like at its rawest level, like it's basic stuff, but the way that they pull it off and present it is just fantastic.
Go ahead. No, finish.
I was just gonna say I'm not gonna spoil it at all, but like you're gonna be blown away by the end of the show.
Oh God, man. Do you think that a casual fan of Back to the Future, maybe someone who's only seen the movie once or twice, is going to enjoy this show? Or do you think, like for instance, I last May, I guess it was, flew to New York and saw Chicago on Broadway. And I'm a fan of Chicago, but I didn't, whatever, Chicago. But I saw it and I was like, oh man, that was a really fun time. Another example is I saw Mary Poppins on Broadway one time, and I was like, wow, I'm not like a massive Mary Poppins fan, but this was really fun. I really enjoyed myself. I'm glad that we went out to the theater tonight. Do you think that the casual fan is going to have an amazing time at the musical?
100%. And we're seeing it already. So I've been following along on social media of people that have gone to the musical, and whether they're diehard fans, casual fans, whatever. And I haven't found really anything negative about it yet. I mean, people are loving it. They're eating it up. I think the first 4 shows, so that would be Friday. I think it was 2 the Saturday and then 1 on Sunday. I believe that was it. Those first 4 shows brought in $1 million plus. It had a 98% occupancy rate at the Winter Garden Theater. I mean, like, not a lot of shows do that immediately, and this is still in opening preview. They're going heavy on advertisement. Back to the Future the musical is all over the digital billboards as you're walking around. I got a random flyer in the mail for it a few weeks ago. I mean, probably just because from when I had signed up about interest in it, but um, they know that they have a hit on their hands, and they are going to bring in fans of all levels. There were people there for that opening preview that are not, diehard Back to the Future movie nuts like us. There are people that just they liked Back to the Future. It brings it nostalgically. They remember the films from back in the day. They liked them. They watch them whenever they're on TV, and that's it. And even they came out and they were like, "Oh man, this was incredible."
Oh man, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to, it's actually, I've never told anyone this, but this is a real story. Every so often I have a dream that another Back to the Future movie was released. Literally every so often I have this dream and I wake up and I'm like, oh man, there isn't a movie out. But this feels like the closest we've come to new Back to the Future narrative being told. And you would know probably better than I. Are there any plans to film this musical?
So I'll answer that in a second, but to circle back to what you said about your dream, I am in the camp that I don't want to see a Back to the Future 4.
Yes.
I want to keep it reserved as the trilogy that we know.
Yes.
And Bob Gale himself has said, like, this musical is my gift to the fans, really, that wanted to see Back to the Future 4. This is your next iteration of Back to the Future. And having now seen it live, I totally get it. Like, anyone that wanted Back to the Future 4, go get tickets. Go to the musical.
Oh, God, you're almost making me upset now because I have to wait. By the way, it's the 8th. I'm going to be there the 8th. Awesome. Is what I think she said in October. So I'm still 3 months away from seeing this thing. So yeah, there's that. But do you know? Are there any plans to film this? Do you know?
So, as far as I know, there are no current plans to film and release this. So it just opened on Broadway. Bob Gale has been very clear about saying, like, this is a spectacle that you have to see live. Like, it doesn't, filming it probably wouldn't do it justice. Not to say that they haven't recorded it privately. I know, I believe Michael J. Fox has seen the musical, but not live. I think they recorded it and sent him a copy. But as far as a public release of it, I don't think we'll see it anytime soon, because it just opened on Broadway and because next year they're starting a North American traveling tour. So they don't want to put out a recording of it and give people less of a reason to want to go see it in person.
Yeah, but I think maybe eventually we'll get it one day.
Maybe eventually. I could see it as, a few years down the road, maybe. I don't know how long they plan on being on Broadway. I hope it's for a long time. But maybe when they decide to start, winding it down, maybe that's when they put out an official, recording of it.
Okay, a couple final things for you. couple final things for you. Before I ask you my final question, which is going to be revisiting a question I asked you before in our last talk, but what would you say your second most fan? I like the second franchise, like number 2 on the list that you're just a massive fan of. If Back to the Future is number 1, do you have a number 2, like a backup series that you're just like, I love these series of movies?
That's a good question. Nothing I can think of to that level. To that level, if I was going to say what my like number 2 is, then we'd start talking about on the music side. But as far as movies, I mean, I guess the closest is, I'm a longtime big fan of Batman movies.
Okay.
And all different iterations of it. I love the old comedic Adam West style. The Michael Keaton films to me are just, top notch. Even, the Dark Knight series, stuff like that. But we're talking like Back to the Future, Batman, like that. It's not like
it's a big leap.
it's a big gap. Yeah.
I was just curious because I feel like we all have, like, because this obviously is always going to be my number 1. But there are some that come not close, but like you, they're here. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. Not bigger than anywhere close to being bigger than Back to the Future, but I do love a good Indiana Jones movie. But here we go. We're gonna see if your answer has changed in the last couple of years. Your rankings. Your rankings of the 3 movies. Have they changed at all? Because I will tell you, the older I get, the stronger I am about Back to the Future 3 being my favorite. Like, the stronger I am. Like, I'm pretty sure that it might be permanently in the top spot. I say that today. Now, tomorrow, my answer could be different. But it's consistently, if people were asking me on any day, like, what's your favorite of the series? Like, well, I think Back to the Future 3 is probably my favorite. Knowing that one's the best, but we're not talking about the best. I'm not asking you to rank them in their technical efficiency or their storytelling ability. I'm talking about just from your pure personal enjoyment. Are we still where you were 3 years ago?
So I think the answer I gave 3 years ago is probably the same I'm going to give now, and that is all 3 of them are top tier movies in my opinion. I mean, like, I kind of feel like ranking them is in a way doing them an injustice. I mean, they're all so good in their own unique way.
I do not disagree.
But my personal order still ranks 2, 1, 3.
Yeah, that's where you were.
And the reason for that is 2 is the one that probably I remember the most from being a kid. And I might have said the same thing last time. And that has to do with, the traveling into the future in 2015, being fascinated by that. And it was just so all over the place. And I remember just being fascinated by everything about it. And then 1, like you said, is like the perfect, iconic, classic movie. And 3 does a fantastic job wrapping it up. And on the collector's side, part 2 was the marketing machine. That's the one that, like, part 1 had merchandise, part 3 had merchandise, but part 2 was where Universal went nuts. I mean, like, and I mean, just as far as stuff from the movie, how much merchandise came out of products from the movie? The hoverboard, the mags,
the Pepsi Perfect,
Pepsi Perfect, yeah,
the almanac.
exactly. Yeah, I will say probably the reason why 3 might rank lower in my personal view, I hate to say it, but it contains my absolute least favorite scene of the entire trilogy. A scene that actually annoys me. Would you like to know what that is?
Yes. Inquiring minds want to know.
This has always bugged me, and I get it from a storytelling perspective. It made the most sense, and it's a very iconic scene in the movie, but from an analysis point of view, it bugs me. And that is when they are on the train at the end of part 3. Not the very end, but when the train is on the tracks racing up to 88 and Doc is rescuing Clara and all that. They've already established well before this in the movie that the hoverboard is basically a skateboard without wheels that hovers. And we've seen Marty get stuck on it and wobbling at times, and he's falling off of it and all that stuff. So my least favorite thing in the entire Back to the Future trilogy is when Doc finally in that monumentous scene scoops up Clara after he had just caught the hoverboard, which was like 1,000,001 shot to begin with, and then turns around and carrying her floats like I don't even know how high off the ground, and suddenly the hoverboard is its own sentient being, keeping them perfectly balanced, hovering off into the distance. And I'm like, the hoverboard never did that before. Why would it all of a sudden be able to act like this? And I get it from like a storytelling point of view. It's that perfect scene of the rescue of Clara and they go on, live happily ever after. But like watching the way the hoverboard acts there, I'm like, what is going on here?
You know what? I will say that does not annoy me, but I have clocked it before. Like before, I'm like, no, that's odd. You know, that's just an odd thing, and it's one of those on triple, quadruple, quintuple repeat viewings of these things.
Exactly.
You go, that's weird. There was something else that stuck out to me when I was watching 2 the other day, and I can't remember what it was, but when I think of it, I'll text you. But yeah, every so often, I get that from movies where, I could see that. Okay. I don't think that's enough to rank it last, but I get it. You know?
No, and it definitely doesn't cause it to be ranked less. I just randomly remembered it while we were chatting about it. But 3, I think has unfortunately gotten some pushback from some fans who are like, oh, 1 is perfect, 2 is out of this world, and then 3, it's, this cowboy Western love story. And I've said to them, I was like, that's what I love about it. I love that they've gone in these different directions. And 3 being that cowboy love Western is incredible. I mean, it's what the trilogy needed. And then the ending, just, your future hasn't been written yet.
No one's
Your
has.
future is whatever you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Make it a good one. Like, I mean, that still gives me chills when I hear it. I mean, 3 is just as incredible as the others.
And we talk about the ending, seeing the DeLorean destroyed by that train is so like it. I can't even describe the emotions that one feels when they see that, because at one point you're like, oh my God, it's a time machine. Like, what in the world? And then you think, well, Doc's now going to be trapped forever. And then you think, but he wanted it to be destroyed since the second movie. And I love when that happens, when they do that in the end of Back to the Future 3. But I also think Back to the Future 3 is the most similar to 1.
I agree.
In the fact of like they're stuck in the past with no clear way to return back to the future. And even like in the original, Marty invents skateboarding, right? By taking the scooter apart or what have you. And then he invents rock and roll. In the third one, he invents the Frisbee. And it's just the small things like that remind me so much of, and the thing about the third one is there's a love story that's preventing this clean break from the timeline that they have to figure out. And I don't know, there's just so many great things about the third one. And I've said this before on this podcast, and I probably said it to you. I'm from Texas, and there's something about a Western. Yeah. Being raised in Texas and raised on Westerns, you just inherently, identify with them, and you like them.
I think 3 is, it's Doc's story.
It is,
and it really does a great job of showing that behind the scientist, Doc is a human being like the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really, it was so well done. My joking about that one scene aside, it's such a great film. And one thing that really I cherish about it is, my daughter is 8. She's at that point where she understands things now, obviously, and all that. And about a year or so ago, I finally was like, hey, why don't we actually like watch Back to the Future, the movies, start to finish? She had seen it in bits and pieces. Her dad's obsessed, so she's around it all the time. But like, I was like, why don't we actually sit down and watch them? So we watched them. We have a monthly movie night with her that we did 3 months in a row. We did Back to the Future. And I think part 3, if I remember correctly, is really what triggered the most emotion from her. She loved the other ones, but 3 really like she was so emotionally invested in it because of the love story and all that. And you brought up the scene about the DeLorean getting smashed by the train. Now, you and I and other people that have seen these films so many times, we know what's happening, we know all that. But it was an incredible moment to be able to see the reaction from someone who has never seen these films before and has no idea what's coming. Because I don't spoil these things for her. When the DeLorean got hit by the train, my daughter burst out into tears
No way.
because she didn't know that Doc was going to come back.
Right.
To her, all this buildup, and then she just thought like, Doc's gone, and in that moment, it had completely gotten to her. And then the rest happened. She got up, she's cheering, she's like, "Yay!" Like it was such a magical moment, and seeing her have that emotional reaction to 3, there's a chance that could drive up my ratings a little bit.
I hear you, and you know what, man, and that's and you mentioned it earlier. It's hard to even rank them at all because they all are so great for their own individual reasons. And I can just when you were talking, I can sit and think about all the differences in the movies and the parts that I love and why I love 1, why I love 2, why I love 3, and it's why we talk about these movies all the time, Eric. We can't stop. With 3 movies, all made before I was even born, have captivated my life forever, man. And they have yours as well. And people can visit collectbttf.com and see all the great antiquities and collectibles and items released over these last coming up on 40 years of Back to the Future. Next year is going to be the 35th anniversary of Back to the Future 2, if you can believe that. So there's so many more things I'm sure are going to come out over these next couple of years. And I'm excited to visit pretty much the Wikipedia page of all Back to the Future collectibles is collectbttf.com. You can get it on social media, collectbttf.com, or collectbttf on all socials. Is there anything? If people want to submit an item, they can do it on the site, right?
Yep. So, like I said before, I want this site to really feel like a community hub. If you have an item that's not listed there yet, there's a good chance it'll be there at some point in the future anyway, but feel free to submit it just in case I'm not aware of it. I'll give you full credit. Give me, pictures, all that stuff. I want everyone to feel like that, this is a project for and with everyone else. This is not like some personal showcase project of myself. I want this is for the fans. This is something that I want everyone to feel like they have a part in. And if you want your own personal Back to the Future collection showed off on the site, you can go to the community page, use the contact us form, send some pictures and a bio, whatever you want included on your page. I'll get that right up so that everyone can see it. And like you said, on social media, it's Collect BTTF, Facebook, Twitter, even though that sounds like it's dying, Instagram.
Do you have a Threads? Do you have a Threads account yet?
I am on Threads, and I've been doing a lot of Back to the Future memeing the last couple days. That's been a lot of fun. Technically, I have an account on even TikTok, Mastodon. Not really using them yet, but basically, go to collectbttf.com. All the links will be right there. And, like I said before, if even just one fan feels like this was a good resource for them, then it was all worth it. And if no one ever looks at the site again, then it's still worth it to be able to, immortalize Back to the Future as far as, its collectibles and stuff like that. So everyone has been so incredible with their support of it. And, I'm looking forward to the future. It's only just getting started. 1,200 something items now, tons more to come.
I can't wait, man. Well, Eric, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us again on Back to the Future, the podcast. I'm sure it will not be your last appearance, and we'll be talking again very soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad.
My thank yous to Eric Tate, but we'll be back next week with another edition of Back to the Future, the podcast. But until next time, my name is Brad Gilmore. I'm your friend in time, and I'll see you in the future.